Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I am your host, MGCovers. This is episode 36. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. On a Tuesday, I have been really sick. I'm actually recovered now, but I still have a little bit of cough, so I apologize for not getting the podcast out on time. And if I cough during this podcast, I apologize as well. I'm drinking coffee and consuming a cough drop as we speak, so hopefully that will mute it a good bit. But we have a ton to cover. I'm in one of those moods where I have something passionate I'm going to talk about in sports handicapping, in this business in general. So this will be a really fun podcast for me because I like to just not really have an agenda. I have an outline when I record these podcasts, so I can just openly talk about the business in general without trying to produce, quote, sports betting content in, 5 to 10 minutes like I would when I made a normal video. All right, so let's talk about our outline for today. We're going to review the week. We had a positive week, profitable week in NFL as well as NBA. We're going to talk about the success we're having with NCAA basketball, made some tweaks to that. We'll talk about that model. And then what's probably going to dominate the majority of this podcast, we're going to talk about fraudulent handicappers. The majority of people that run ads on Instagram or whatever platform are fraudulent or they're not professionals. And overall, the perception of sports betting success. I'm going to give an example from a YouTube comment we got on the channel this week. So a lot to cover. So let's dive into it. We'll pull up the betting log here. And this is important to show you guys this. Again, what determines who is sharp and who is not sharp? My definition, and I think it's the correct definition of someone that's sharp or someone that is a professional in this business, is somebody that can win long term. It takes no talent to have a winning day. I'm going to repeat that. It takes no talent to have a winning day. Anybody can do that. Anybody can have a winning week. Anybody can have a winning month. But then once you get beyond that, where you're talking about, 1,000+ wagers in a year's time, which is about what I average, and to be profitable, there's only a small percentage of people that can do that. The general consensus was, I heard this in a lot of Bob McCune books, he would say only 3% of the people that wager on sports are profitable. I think it's probably closer to 5% now, but I don't think it would be any higher than that. So that means out of 1,000 people that wager on sports, only 50 of those are profitable long term. A very, 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 very small percentage. So irregardless of what you see on Instagram, regardless of what you see on YouTube, and most people that advertise their service or most people that are pretending to be, quote, professional handicappers are not. So they're inflating their numbers. They're misleading you. They're not really showing you. If they do have anything like this, it's basically fraudulent or made up. So looking at the betting log, really rough start to NHL. I haven't wagered on NHL. I made one small mistake with the model. I've tweaked that now. And I went back the other day and tried to, in fact, last night ran a massive back test and it was marginally profitable, but not enough to justify playing moving forward. So I still have some changes to do there. Soccer, haven't started back wagering, but the concept that we're working on now has been profitable. NBA, my primary focus right now, we're at 4.96 units year to date. I'll actually show you that log here. Cashed a really nice dog last night with the Knicks. And looking at this overall, we've cashed 1, 2, 3 dogs. So out of 10 of our wins, 3 of those have been moneyline dogs. We cashed Golden State 2.24, Dallas 1.75, and of course the Knicks last night at 1.3. So not a ton of moneyline dogs. A statistical property of NBA, favorites win a majority of the time. So majority of the time we are playing favorites, but still want to play some moneyline dogs. So extremely profitable to start for NBA. Man, if we could get NBA to 10 units before the end of the year, I'd be so thrilled with that. And I don't think I would, quote, shut it down, but I would still be very cautious. And NBA this year feels a lot different for me. I did increase the sample size. I don't know if I talked about that in the last podcast. So I originally had a 5-game sample for the model, and I don't want to reveal what I'm doing now, but it's significantly higher than that. And another point to make about having a stat model partner or another partner that's on your level that you share information with. The changes we made with Major League Baseball was huge. One of my stat model partners at the time really helped me. It was a very large sample size for MLB. And I remember when he told me that, I told him, I said, hey, I don't think this is going to work because it's too large of a sample size. Boom, it worked. And that was one of the reasons why we turned the corner in Major League Baseball and had a real successful year, was that large sample size. And I think overall, probably assessing me as a handicapper, probably the majority of my models were probably on the smaller sample size, meaning it was too small of a sample size. So increasing the sample size for NBAs paid huge dividends. All right, let's see what else we got here. Look at this betting log. Going back to NFL. Let me show you NFL. We've had, up 4.36 units with NFL. Remember, we were about 3 units in the hole, 3.5 units in the hole with MLB. Now, real cautious here these last 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, but we're up 7.05 units for NFL since week 10. Again, playing, I know I've preached a lot of times that you need to play a lot of volume with NFL, and that might work for a lot of people. It worked for me in the past, but I'm having a ton of success just playing real small volume. You look, week 10, we had Washington. Week 11, 1, 2, 3, 4 plays. Last week, we had 2 plays. And this week, we had Detroit. That was it. And we could have played, I posted on Instagram, could have played Baltimore last night. You had positive line movement moving in favor of Baltimore. My model had Baltimore minus 6.5. And the line was 3? So definitely, and they won 30-23. So the model for NFL and the changes we made, extremely sharp. And I will say this, a brief point to make about NFL. That sport has changed in this would be the 3rd year. So 2 years ago, I noticed it looked a lot different. That was when all those unders were cashing. If you'd have played all unders 2 years ago, you've been profitable. And then, of course, last year, I had the first losing season I've ever had in NFL. NFL was always the number one sport for me, and sport changed. And I think a lot of people still, even this year, sharps are struggling with NFL as well. And since we're talking about that, I think this is a good segue. I can't show this screenshot of this, but I'm going to pull it up on my computer. And this is an important point. I'll get to this in just a second when we talk about, like, people struggle overall to understand what success looks like in this industry. Like, for example, look at my betting log here. Let's go back to the year to date for all the sports. NHL -7, soccer -1 unit, NBA 4.96 units, NCAA football -5 units. And if you remember, we were up right at 10 units in NCAA football. So we've lost 14 since we're at the peak of our units, probably around like mid-October. NFL profitable 4.36 units. MLB is basically our anchor sport, 34 units. And then NHL last spring from like January to March, 19.25 units for a year-to-date total of 50.28. So if you're somebody like me that wagers pretty much all sports, you're not going to be profitable in all sports. So if you see a handicapper online, they're profitable in baseball, they're profitable in basketball, they're profitable in soccer, they're profitable in tennis. It's not impossible, but it's highly unlikely that they're profitable in every single sport that they're wagering on. That's just the way the business is. It's that difficult. But anyway, back to this other handicapper. This handicapper, if I mention his name, everybody would know who this is. He's like the lead, quote, sports betting guru model for this particular group. They're probably the most popular, most well-respected group that, quote, sells plays, basically like I do. And again, I'm not throwing shade on this guy. I'm just making a point how difficult this business is. He is he's not getting killed. He's 33-43 for NFL. He had Washington, Giants, Indy, New England, all those lost. Looks like he played the over on New England, Miami. That was a win, and Green Bay was a win. So he went 4-2 this weekend, but overall he's 33-43. This, because he's 33-43, does not mean that he's not sharp. He's just, quote, struggling with NFL. So what a realistic handicapper, somebody that's successful in this business, again, that's pointing out he's probably profitable for the year, but he's down on NFL. So if you see somebody in this industry again, and they're representing themselves as though they're profitable in every single sport, probably not true, my friend. So anyway, quick little rant there. Let's take a look at NCAA basketball. Really excited about this basketball model. It's, quote, the same model, but the way that I'm calculating it is a little bit different than previous years. And let's talk about sample size. It is a larger sample size this year, which is another change I made. So a little sneak peek if you're looking at this, if you're watching this on YouTube. So I'll give you a free play is San Francisco over Fordham. We have that at minus 15.5. I think the line's minus 11, but the way that I'm capping it, that would be a play. If you take a look at these results, when I first started tracking this, I'm not wagering this. So when you're looking at this, that's why it's not included in the betting log. This is just me tracking this model. 10-6 on 11/22, up 5.77 units, 7.6 units. The next day it goes 3-0, playing all favorites. 11/24 it goes 5-2, up 3.36 units, cashed a few dogs that day. And then last night it was 3-2. It cashed that game with Dayton. The model had Dayton minus 14. So obviously that'd be a play at plus 9. So it went 3-2 yesterday, 0.8 units gained. So in the 4 days we've tested this, model is 21-10, up 12.92 units. And if you're new, or even if you're not new, you might ask, well, why didn't you wager this on 11/22? You'd be up 12.68, basically 13 units. You are correct. However, considering this was new, the way that I was calculating it, not wagering, quote, real dollars and tracking it was still the right play. Because it was new, I didn't back test it. I didn't really have time to, because I knew there'd be sufficient data. I could just run a basic, small test like this. And what if it would have gone, I would have wagered real dollars and would have gone 10-21. What would be my advice for somebody that did that? I would say you actually made a mistake because it was new. You had no back test. The model was not yet proven. So you should have tested it before you wager real dollars. And then if it went 10-21, you could have made some tweaks, et cetera, et cetera. So even though this is positive, and this is a good thing, even though we didn't wager real dollars, it was still the correct play not to wager, quote, real dollars. And the reason I thought about wager now, but what we already know about sports betting in general is this model will regress. It's 21-10 is just under 70%. It's not going to maintain 70%, right? So it's going to regress. So, but nonetheless, I'm super excited the way that we've calculated it. It's generally less volume than years past, and I still could tweak this to some degree. For example, kind of what we did last year, anytime we had a double-digit favorite via my line, it was a play irregardless of what the book's line was. So that's something I'm kind of tracking. But for now, the way that I'm calculating this is actually working. So I'm ranking every single MLB teams from 1 to 328, and I'm playing only the top. I can't remember exactly how I got it, top 30. There's another criteria that I put in there. So I'm just playing the top teams via the model to win and cover, and having a lot of success. So super excited about the NCAA basketball season. And another reason, I made a previous video about this a while back. If you're just starting out, this is a really good sport to model. There's just not a lot to not a lot of stats to come up with. It's not that complex of a game. You have points, you have points scored, points against, you have, 3-point percentage, 3-point field goal percentage, steals, assists, turnovers. You don't really have that many stats. So if you have just a little bit of knowledge of how the game is played, and I think college basketball is a lot different than NBA as far as how it's handicapped. At least for me, it's a different model. I've used the same model in the past, but this one's completely different than NBA. But nonetheless, excited about it. And I think it's a sport to where it's very, very difficult for the sports books to set a, quote, good line. There is a ton of discrepancy. And that Dayton game was a good example. Dayton led, what did they lead by? Maybe like 12, 13 points at halftime. And North Carolina was -9. And North Carolina ended up winning that game. But of course, Dayton could have easily won it as well. So that line was way off. And the line moved in favor of North Carolina. So it's very difficult for sharps and even the books to create, quote, a good line. So if you got a good model, you can really take advantage of the marketplace there. Okay. All right. So here's what I want to dive into. I'll show you this. This was a comment I got on my YouTube page, and I'm going to read this if you're listening to the podcast. I'm trying to think of a good way to say this. Overall, I think the majority of people that follow me, the majority of my clients, the majority of people listening to this podcast think the way that I think or adhere to my teaching, which is it's a very difficult business. It's a doable business, but it's very difficult. And I would say I echo the sentiment of the majority of people that are successful in this business. They're successful, but they would still tell you it's a very difficult business. And another parallel to that would be golf, which I'm also a golfer. Golfer is a very difficult sport. And I would encourage you to maybe the next time you're bored, maybe watch some post-round interviews with golfers. It's always the same interview. They'll say things like, I wouldn't hit my driver very well, but I was ball striking it well, and I was putting it extremely well. I had a few bad tee shots, but again, my short game was really good. I was putting the ball really well. Or you might hear somebody say, I've made some swing changes. I'm struggling, but I scrambled really well. I was spraying the ball, missing my drives. I was missing a lot of greens, but I scrambled. I got up and down a lot today and played extremely well. That's generally what success sounds like for people that are professionals in pretty much any entity. And it's the same with sports betting. So if you hear people say things like, oh, this sports betting's easy, I'm crushing it, we're hitting 70% year to date, it's not true, my friend. And which brings me to this comment I got on YouTube. So if this person is watching this, again, I apologize. I didn't put his name up here. And again, I'm not throwing shade on this, but this is a really good teaching point. And this was a video I made. Basically what we're doing in NCAA basketball, where we're ranking teams from best to worst and just playing the top teams or playing against the bottom teams. And I did not reveal what stat I was using, so I'm not sure how he was calculating this. But he says, and I quote, through week 12, this strategy appears slightly better than break even. Hitting 54%, 3% ROI, which suggests put your money elsewhere. See what I'm saying? The industry, and part of it is not his fault. Part of it is this market, the sports betting community, is saturated with fraudulent handicappers, people misrepresenting the business. The majority of people that run ads on Facebook, that run ads on Instagram for sports betting, and we'll cover that in a second, fraudulent. They're totally misrepresenting the business. So again, you've heard me talk about my goal is to educate people what success looks like. I showed y'all what a year-to-date betting log would look like for somebody that's successful. You're not going to be positive in all sports. I posted that last night on Instagram. We went on a 5-20 run to close out MLB season. We're down in NCAA football. There was a huge betting syndicate on a podcast, Circles Off podcast, I think 2 podcasts ago. he talked about they got absolutely destroyed in NCAA football. In fact, the week that we had our worst week ever, we went 6. All 6 of those plays had value via my model and had positive line movement. And so back to this comment, I don't think he was calculating this correctly, because I think if he was playing money line dogs, the ROI would be higher if he's hitting 54%. But nonetheless, if you're hitting 54% and a 3% ROI through week 12, say in the NFL season or whatever season this was, college football, only 5% of the people that wager on sports could do this. And yet his comment would suggest put your money elsewhere. Is that not insane? So again, I don't think it's the majority of people that listen to my podcast or subscribe to my channel or people that are my clients, because they get it. But again, the perception of what success looks like in this industry is totally flawed. People think that success is somebody that has a winning day every single day. That's not going to happen. Wins in every single sport and wins at a ratio of 70%, which is basically near impossible to do for a long period of time in this industry. So that's why I will continue to go back to this point and try to show you a true representation of what this business is. This is a very difficult business. You can be profitable in sports betting long term. It's doable, yes, but it's very difficult. The golf is a very difficult sport. All of the professional golfers would tell you it's very difficult to make a living playing golf. Possible, doable, but it's extremely difficult. And when you're navigating, even if you're not one of my clients and you're just here listening to this podcast or watching this video for the first time, the sentiment of a successful handicapper will be the same sentiment that I have. You can be profitable in this business long term and make good money, but it's very difficult to do. It's not an easy business. It's not easy money. You're not going to have winning days every day. And the reason that this person probably wrote this comment is, I'm going to show you the next screenshot. This is I'm going to show you 3 Instagram ads. This is what people see and hear the most in the sports betting community. Now, before I actually talk about this guy that claims to be the number one sports picks, listen to this, he has 12,000 plus winning clients. That's not true. I've offered my services to the general public now for 5 years. He does not have 12,000 plus winning clients. He doesn't, trust me. That's just an unrealistic number. So the majority of what you see, all right, I'll come back to this in a second. The majority in life, the majority of what you hear and see the most of, you will believe that. That's why for most people, the reason I talk with the accent I talk, my parents talk this way. A lot of the values and the way that I process decisions, the way that I have, the reason I have the opinions I have were influenced by my parents. The older you get, you start to have your own opinions. This is why it's very important to be careful what you put into your brain with regards to the media. The media is basically a propaganda machine. Let me give you another example. You heard back during COVID, I'm not against the vaccine, by the way, but you heard politicians say, take the vaccine's good for you. You should never get advice about your health from a politician. How many people did what I did during COVID? I did this. I go to my doctor and I said, I want to get your opinion about the vaccine. And he gave me his opinion, which I thought was really good. So my point is, people are getting misinformation about sports betting, and that's the reason why I think the masses think the way that they think. because they think, hey, sports betting's easy. The successful people in sports betting are absolutely crushing it, just absolutely crushing it every single day, and it's just not true. So when you're looking through these, like this guy here is Chillman Picks. Again, I can't verify it, but I would bet I'm 99.99% sure he doesn't have 12,000 plus winning clients. And let's look at the next one here. And this guy here, number one consultant in the world. In 2023, he was up 124 units. No, not true. And when you see these ads, all these ads look the same. They'll throw up some unrealistic number. I mean, he could be up 100. He could have made 123 units, 24 units in 2023. But I promise you, if you send this guy a DM and ask him for his betting log for 2023, he couldn't produce it. And if he was the number one consultant in the world, wouldn't you have heard of Art Bets _, by now? But again, this is the majority of what people see. And again, he's posting like a run 14-7, which I wouldn't even believe. And what's interesting to note about people that misrepresent this business are basically just trying to scam people. Why are these people running ads? Because if you're credible and you are a successful handicapper, you could create your own YouTube channel and do what I do, offer a ton of educational value for the consumer in hopes that those people would turn into clients. Some will, some won't, which is basically my premise and how I promote my business. But they just run ads. And the reason they run ads is they don't have any credibility. These guys, if you would send them a DM, probably couldn't even calculate margins. And then I think this one really makes me laugh. VS Picks 1,000 to 1 million in 10 months. Now the sad part is there's people that have looked at this, read this, and actually sent this guy money thinking that it's possible to take $1,000 and turn it into 1 million in 10 months. And then below that, you read there, he says that he doesn't really, I'm going to show you the exact bankroll management strategy I used in the past to turn, he's saying that he did this, that he turned $50 into $40,000 in 2 months. $1,000 to $100,000 in 2 months in 3 weeks. So I'm guessing he's claiming that he took 1,000 and turned it into 100,000 in 2 months, and then also did it in 3 weeks as well. Now, for the smart, savvy individual out there that's watching this, probably realizes this is fake and fraudulent. But again, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people that will read this and actually believe it. But again, the majority of what you see and hear out there with related to sports betting education, it's fraudulent. It is what it is. And again, that's why it's so frustrating for me, because again, going back to this comment right here, is that people truly don't know what success looks like in this business, because the majority of what they consume is incorrect information, is fraudulent. And so again, I've said this quote a gazillion times, and it's one of my favorite quotes ever. There's 2 quick paths to failure in life: take advice from everybody, or take advice from nobody. And so you have to really, really, really be conscious of what you consume. Same deal in politics. If you sit in front of a TV and you watch Fox News all day, you will eventually think like how people think on the right. Same deal if you sit in front of a TV and you watch nothing but MSNBC, you will think and process information like people on the left do. Neither one of those is healthy. And with regards to news and how we obtain information is a big problem in our society. And of course, it's a big problem in a sports betting industry as well. Because, anybody could start right now. You could make up a Twitter handle and start posting, hey, I went 5-0 yesterday, 7-0, we're on a 32-3 run an ad on Instagram. If there's ever a profession that needs to be regulated, sports betting community would be a good one for government to jump in and regulate. I mean, even if it was something simple, like in order to post plays or to represent yourself as handicap, you have to pay like $200 registration. Be a good way for governments to make money, even at the state level. And you have to pass a 50-question sports betting test. That would make it illegal for people to advertise themselves as a sports handicapper if they hadn't taken that test. I'm telling you, that would work. That would work. And then you had an easy way to report people that were advertising, and maybe just like mortgage lenders. I think in some states they require you to put if you're a mortgage broker, your lender number up there. Wouldn't that be great? Sports handicapper, my number would be 5426, and you're required by law to post it on any type of social. And then people could look you up, 5426, type it into a database and realize maybe you weren't a winning handicapper, but at least you did the proper things. But if they did that, that would eliminate, 99% of this garbage that's out there. So, almost seemed like depressing talking about all these fraudulent handicappers, but it's out there. And again, I appreciate those people that listen to this podcast. I'm not the only one that pumps out good content. There are a few out there, but it's not the masses. And so be careful with what you consume. It will affect you. And I'm super excited to see if we can close out this month with let's go back to the betting line here. We're at 50 units right now. Man, if we could get to 60, that seems doable. That'd be an extremely successful year. And I think primarily, I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to focus on NBA and NFL. NFL will start to get harder here as we get closer to the end of the season. Some of these teams are not going to be making the playoffs, not going to be motivated. So I think in a couple of those models that I had, I shut it down the last 2 weeks, and we'll probably do the same here as well. But super excited about NBA having a ton of success. If you're watching this podcast, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, or if you want to be a client, there's a link to join the description. Greatly appreciate you guys listening to this podcast, and thanks for the support as always. Talk to you guys next week. Peace.